Yeah, all good. All good. It's a beautiful late spring evening here and just gone for a nice, beautiful walk around and yeah, nice and fresh, beautiful spring evening. And I was doing a bit of thinking and reflecting, going for a walk this evening, how you'll see the EFL retain list starting to sort of drop around about now. So you start to sort of notice, like, for example, League One clubs up and down the country starting to publish who's in and who's out, basically. And a lot of fans, obviously, at this point, will sort of look through social media and see which names have been retained and let go as well. And I suppose, from my perspective, looking at things from a performance coach perspective, is sort of seeing this happen in a team environment. Sometimes you sort of, you're sitting with a player the next day after they've either been retained or let go. And I think some people might imagine it's a real formal process. And in my experience, it's not necessarily a really formal process. It might be a sit down in the gaffer's room, and a sit down, a handshake, sometimes there is, a little bit more formal other times, but sometimes it's not even as formal as that. For lower league players especially, it can be a brutal brief. It could be, okay, well, your contract's up June the 30th, so to speak. If the club hasn't offered you one by, I think it's May 16, that EFL deadline, the player already knows that sort of silence can be deafening for players before anyone knows. So you kind of think, okay, well, they've not been told otherwise. So it can be obviously really challenging, for players. And, and I don't think it's something sort of discussed enough, really, from my perspective, because the players don't just lose a job, so to speak. It's like, they might be living in an area where the kids are settled in school and, they've been playing for a team for a few years. Or it could be they've had a good season, they're not quite sure what's happened, type thing. So, but they also lose that routine. They lose that structure, that sense of community. Sometimes, they live in the community, they're known, they go for walks, have coffee, get to know people and that sort of stuff in that area. And all of that, all at once, literally, gets taken away. And you might have players sometimes since the age of 9, they've been at the sort of the club as well, and then obviously they become professional, and one day it's sort of the rugs kind of swept from under their feet, so to speak. So the psychological hit in that situation is enormous. That's for sure. I've seen experienced professionals, just feel completely lost in that sort of that period of being released and trying to find a new club, so to speak. And some players obviously will have agents navigating things, and there is a lot of support, I believe, now than there used to be, like with the PFA and stuff like that. And look, I don't entirely know what support's available, but I think clubs no doubt will point the players in direction to support, whether it's the sort of PFA or whatever. All support can help, that's for sure. But the purpose of the video is not sort of going on down that road. It's more about the impact, so to speak. So, and I think for me, from my perspective, the players who navigate it, if we call it the best, so to speak, are the ones who keep the perspective during the career. They might have sort of relationships outside the dressing room. They've got other stuff going on in their life as well, with identity, like physically, mentally. They kind of work on themselves and work on other things as well too. And I suppose for me, I would say, in my opinion, and this is sort of anecdotal, I'm not here to give advice, I'm not making suggestions, but I think for me, in my opinion, based on my experience of working with individual players that were like played professionally and semi-professionally, and individual players, and working in teams as well, in team environment as well, I would say the worst thing a player can do is just sort of, for the window to go quiet and just wait for the phone to ring. I think it's about being proactive and sort of, reaching out to whatever support is available. Because as the EFL retained list starts to drop, hundreds of players that enter, one of the most uncertain periods of their life. And having worked as a performance coach in both professional and semi-professional, I've seen what happens next. And it's rarely about football ability. For some players, the release becomes motivation. For others, it can be like an identity loss overnight. For some players, it's sort of motivation. Okay, I'm going to rebuild my career. For some, it's like, okay, well, I'm not so sure if I'll sort of carry on playing football. I might look for different options. But I think for me, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, the ones who handle it best are the ones who kind of stay in shape physically as the sort of season comes to an end. Mentally, they keep some sort of routine as well. They lean on and have a good proximity around them of support as well. And they understand that basically, it's only one judgment on their career, because there might have been a variety of reasons why they haven't been sort of taken on or retained by the club. It could be the position, it could be what the club's looking for. And I think a lot of people don't see outside the game how difficult it can be also, not just financially, emotionally, psychologically, especially for younger players who've only known academy or first team football. That's not to say it's not more difficult for players who've been in the game for a long time. Perhaps if they've been in the game for a long time, they might already start to make some sort of transition to open a business or a different career, so to speak. But I think, on the other side of things, from retained lists, from working in non-league environments too, sometimes in a non-league perspective, you look at the retained list and players aren't retained to see if you can sort of make contact and maybe sort of ask them to play non-league. Sometimes players can rediscover the joy for the game. You get late developers too. Sometimes you get players who don't develop till later on in life, so to speak, and they might rebuild career. I've known players who sort of, they've completely, rebuilt their career, so to speak. Completely, gone into business or something else, so to speak. Look, it is what it is. And sometimes a player might get released. It's a marathon, not a sprint. One player gets retained, and then the following year, the player who got released ends up in a better situation team-wise than the one who got retained. You just don't know. It's a marathon. And it's not easy for the coaches, obviously, too, and staff, that's for sure, because it's difficult decisions they've got to make as well. It's a difficult conversation to be had. But I think, being honest is a good place to start. And I don't think, for me, it's not the end of the story for most players. Sometimes you could say it's the start of a whole new journey for players. And a lot of players at this moment in time, it's a tough time, that's for sure. And I think it's important to sort of stay focused, keep in shape, see what's available out there as well. Other options, get whatever support you can, speak to the club, see what else is out there in that situation. So, all I can say from that perspective, if your player going through that now, wish them all the best, and make sure you speak to your club or whatever support networks the club have got to sort of help you with. And for fans, I think the sort of realization when that kind of list drops, I hope this gives you a different perspective. That's for sure. So, feel free to leave your comments, your thoughts, perspectives in what obviously is a difficult time for players. And even sometimes the players do get retained. It can be difficult sometimes seeing a teammate not get retained as well, because you make, really good, friendships in the game. But it is what it is. It's not an easy conversation for managers as well. And that's for sure, because obviously they've got to make decisions based on budgets and other stuff as well. But that's my take on it. It's always good to hear other people's thoughts and feedback, but I thought I'd sort of give a different perspective on that from a different angle.